Before we start, I want to look at 3 words that are going to be in our book. This is the first word. Close. This word is seep.
When I got my clothes washed, they were seep.
Good. Okay, so again, what does seep mean? It means when water or liquid, right, slowly oozes through something. So let's say that word together again. Seep. Excellent. Next word, minerals. Do you guys know what minerals are?
Yes.
Have you studied this before? What are they?
Rocks.
They're
Type
like-
of rocks.
Right.
Rocks.
Okay.
They're, if it's a mineral, it's one thing, and if it's a rock, it's 2 or more things.
Very
Or
good.
2 or more minerals.
Does anyone know an example of a mineral?
It gets diamonds, made out of diamonds.
Good. So like some of these minerals, they have, if you look at them under a microscope, they're like crystals, right? And so some examples like things that you find in nature that aren't plants, they're not animals, and they're not really rocks. They're different. Yes.
Talk about minerals.
Yes, minerals.
So if you compare, it's not a mineral, but if you compare a rock to a cookie, they're the same thing because you're adding more ingredients to it.
So a rock's made up of multiple things. Okay, let's go to our last word. See the last word is imprint.
Imprint.
All right, so there's 2 parts to this word. Look, im and print. Okay, so imprint means a mark that's made on something by pressure. So for example, I might, in our book, the author's going to tell us that a fossil is an imprint of a plant or an animal, just like we saw in our pictures, remember? It was an imprint of a plant or an animal. Or you could say, when my sister grabbed my arm because she put pressure on your arm. Or you could say, I rolled out some Play-Doh nice and flat, and I made an imprint of my hand in it. Turn to your partner and tell them a sentence that has imprint in it. All right, let's talk about our book. Ready? So this is actually kind of a tricky book because this is an informational book. It's called Fossils Tell About Long Ago. But it sort of looks like a fiction book because all the pictures in it are drawn. So what we see is pictures that are drawings. And look over on the side here. I'm going to show you this one thing. See how on some of the pages there are some kids over here on the side? See where my finger is? And they actually talk. So they have some conversations with each other that talk about the book. But this book is actually nonfiction. And let me tell you about how this book's organized. So everyone look at my picture right here. So have you ever seen, this is a topic. So the book's going to be about one main topic, and then we're going to find out different things about the main topic. If you had to guess, what do you think the main topic of this book is? What do you think?
Fossils.
Yep. And so some of the subtopics that we're going to read about are what fossils are, how they're made, and then you'll get into finding out what you can learn about long ago from looking at fossils. So today we're going to read the first half of the book, and then on the next day you'll read the rest. So everyone open up your folder, take out your book, put it in front of you. So I want to show you where we're going to stop today. So when you get to page 15, everyone see the page numbers down in the corner? See where my finger is right here? When you get to page 15, that's where we're going to stop. Okay? So we'll stop there today. So now I want you to listen for a second before we get started. While you're reading, I want you to think really carefully. Everyone with me? Think really carefully. I want you to think about something become a fossil. What's the process that it goes through? We don't know yet. We're going to read and find out. So is everybody ready?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk about this when you're done reading. So you're going to open up and you're going to read and you're going to stop at page 15 and we're going to talk about how something becomes a fossil. Question?
Yeah, I have a book of fossils.
Excellent. That would be a great thing to refer to after. All right, everyone ready? Open your book.
So page.
Start on the first page. You can start on the title page and then you can read silently to yourself on your own.
This starts with Once Upon a Time. Don't makes it.
I know, doesn't it?
What?
Let's talk about that after you read. So read to yourself.
But it's really not because it's about fossils or fossils are weird.
what is a fossil? What was another subtopic that?
There was no truth about the fish.
Say that again?
There was no truth about the fish.
There's no trace of the fish? Okay, that's right. So what does that tell us about fossils? So that sort of goes with what is a fossil, but then also,
And let's have no shape.
right, they have no shape.
That they can be individual fossil like a plant, a fish, a dinosaur, a
Okay.
leaf. No,
Yep.
leaf just
So
repeat.
listen, everyone listen. So what you're telling me right now are all details that would go with what is a fossil, right? So what else did we learn about? That would be a subtopic of fossils, do you think? We learned about what they are. What else did we learn about? What do you
That
think?
fossils get pushed down into layers of mud.
So,
There.
good. Yeah, so that's a detail about what? That's exactly.
Fossils?
About what about fossils? How they are,
Rocks.
how they are rocks, or how they become rocks, which is
Stones.
stones. All right. Eventually they harden like rocks and stones. But what is that about? What is it about?
It's about
All right, let me tell you what I think it's about. You know what I think it's about? It's about how fossils are made. Right? So, now what I want you to do is I want you to turn in your book to where you think it tells about how fossils are made. And I want you to look at that page, on the page about how fossils are made, and let's talk about what happens when fossils are made. All right, start us off. What happens?
The tools or animal fossil structure stone is called a fossil.
Okay, so that's what it is, right? How did it become a fossil like this? What happens first?
It says, at first, what happens is, on the first page,
No, not the first page of the story. First part of how
Oh.
something becomes a fossil. Go ahead.
it says it dies first.
Okay, good. So something dies, right?
It sinks, if it's a fish, it sinks in the bottom of the sea, and slowly the soft parts of the fish rot in.
Okay, good. Stop right there. So something dies, it sinks if it's a fish or something like that, right? And then it said the soft part, what? Rots, right? What does that mean? What does that mean?
It stinks and
It stinks, right?
it's like gets soft.
Gets soft and yucky and,
Goes bad.
right, goes bad. And then eventually what happens to it? What does it do?
It turns into a fossil and
Before it becomes a fossil, when it
Oh.
rots.
when it rots, when it rots, it goes like deep and
All right, so yeah, and so all the soft tissue's gone, and then what's left? What's
the
left?
bones.
Just the bones. Then what happens? So now we have bones. What happens to the bones? Okay, it shows us. What page are you on? All right, let's look on page 10 and 11. So it dies, it sinks, we have bones left, and then what happens?
It turns to a fossil.
All right, so how does it do that? What happens to it? Go ahead.
Mud pressures it and
All right, so mud comes on top of it, and that makes it heavy. It gives it pressure, right? And then what happens?
The mud gets pressure and then it becomes a fossil.
It becomes a fossil right then?
No,
What happens?
it goes like, it turns into a fossil, but it's,
So we have mud pressing down on it, on those bones.
Oh,
What happens to the mud? What happens to the mud? Look in your book and find it. What happens to the mud?
it seeps.
It's seeped. What seeped?
Well, fossils seep when the mud is pressing down on it.
Okay, so water seeps in while the mud's pressing down on it. It says the water, I'm looking in my book right here. The water seeped into all the tiny holes in the fish bones. The water has minerals in it, and what happens to the bones? What do they turn into?
Rocks.
Yeah, they turn into stone, right? And then it becomes a fossil. And eventually someone finds it. All right, let's see if we can do that process again. So what happens first when something becomes a fossil?
It gets dipped into the ground.
Even before that, what happens?
It dies.
It dies. So something dies. All right, then what happens?
It leaves bones in it.
It leaves bones. All right, before it leaves just the bones, what happens?
It rots.
Right, so it rots. I'm going to do a really, sorry for my bad writing. It rots. Then we have bones. Then what happens to the bones?
Mud pressures on it.
Good. So we get mud on it and pressure. And then what happens? What happens next, you guys?
It turns into a fossil.
All right, but before it turns into a fossil, something else has to happen. And it goes with one of our vocabulary words.
Seep.
Right, what happens?
The mud the water seeps into the fossils.
Yes, so water seeps into the bones, right? And then there's minerals in the water. And so it hardens into stone, and then it becomes a fossil. Everybody okay?
Yes.
I want you to get your yellow paper that's in your folder. And I want you to get a pencil. And I want you to, here's what I want you to write for me today. I want you to write about, get one?
I'm gonna try to name on it.
Sure.
'Cause
Well, if it's going to go in your folder, you probably don't need to. Here's what I want you to write about. I want you to write about what we just talked about. How does something become a fossil? You can use any example you want. You could use a leaf, you could use a fish, but I want you to write for me, how does something turn into a fossil?
So what if this is like a hard word that we need help on?
Just do your best. It doesn't matter to me if you spell everything correctly now, just do your best. So if you don't know how to spell it, just sound it, put the letters you hear, okay? All right, now look, we just talked about this, right? How something becomes a fossil. So now what I want you to do is write it down. All right, go for it. That might be a good thing that can help you.
Just like the boxes and stuff.
Like
You don't have to draw the boxes and stuff. Listen, remember what I said I want you to write about?
The
How something becomes a fossil.